You're getting your wiggles out. 19 wiggles with you.
Okay.
Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for coming. We wanted to create an opportunity for people to share stories.
Oh.
Your picture is frozen, Richard.
Okay, like now we're better. So, what we're gonna do is just do we're gonna go around and you could say this is transparent facilitation. I have two choices. Either we could go around and just quickly say names and then open it up for people to share stories. Or we could, hi Raziel, or we can go around and if you have something to share, you say your name and hi to my mom, and then you say your thing, and if you don't, you say your name and then you pass. So the second one? Okay, great. And if you pass, but you want to share later, that's totally fine. If you're not ready yet, just don't make a whole thing of waiting and not knowing, just pass and then we will come back to you. Don't worry. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna
And Margie?
Yeah.
Why don't we have everyone hold the phone so?
Okay, great.
So-
This will be like our Native American talking stick. Okay. Hi, I'm Maggie.
Hi,
Yes, wanna
dear.
say-
How are you?
Say hi to Maggie. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm gonna not tell a story first, but I'm gonna say, my name is Margie and I'm Harriet's daughter. Do you want to say who you are?
My name is Ozzy.
And how do you know grandma?
He made my mom, and then my mom made me.
Very good. Yeah, okay. And Oriel, how do you, what do you want to say your name?
I'm Oriel, and I know Harriet because she's my grandmother.
Okay, wonderful. We can share stories, but let's pass for now.
I'm Ken. Harriet and I were married for 45 years.
Wait, why don't you speak to I think you should speak to the room and have Aunt Maggie.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Peggy and I'm married to Jerry, who is Kenny's brother, who was married to Harriet.
Thank you. And I'm Jerry, that's Ken's baby brother for my entire life. And I'm married to Peggy.
Oops, you're covering it with your hands.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm Phil,
He knows.
and I'm married to that beautiful lady over there, Irma. And I'm married into this wonderful family at the point at which I had been divorced and a custodial parent, very depressed. And I met her because I started a singles group in order to meet a bright, intelligent Jewish woman. That's my story.
Hi, I'm Mackie.
Hi, sweetie.
Love you.
We
So
love you
I'm
too.
Harriet's cousin. Or one of her many cousins.
Hi, I'm
Debbie.
Barbara Binnick,
Debbie.
and Harriet and I were I was on the board of Kulanu the whole time that Harriet was the president. And I remember her saying, do you think I should take the presidency? And I said, absolutely, you're doing it now anyway. And so Harriet has been one of my best friends for life.
You covering it? I can't see you.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Sussman, and I was vice president of Kulanu under Harriet, and Harriet changed my life by taking me under her arms.
I'm Jerry Sussman, Bonnie's husband, and Kulanu has become part of my life through Harriet and through Bonnie. And I remember her as warm and intelligent and a kind of leadership abilities and all these great things. So I think she's really one of the most remarkable people and most constructive people I've ever met.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Beckerman, I'm a member of West End Synagogue, where I many years ago had the great privilege to meet Harriet and Ken. And as I think everyone knows, Harriet was just a force of nature. The poem by Marge Percy that was read today at the graveside really was so apt. She was a person who set her sights to do and did. There were no excuses. There was always attention to detail. She was kind and loving to everyone. I don't know another person in my life, and I know a lot of people who walk the walk and talk the talk and did it the way that Harriet did. And some of you may know that there's a tradition, there's a belief that at any time on earth, there are 36 people who are called the Lamed Vavniks. And as I understand it, they're kind of placeholders while we're waiting for the Messiah to come and for everything to be as wonderful as it needs to be. And the Lamed Vavniks are here to kind of help and hold the place for the Messiah and do good things on earth. And from the moment I met Harriet, and I said it to her face, and she was very humble and, didn't, that was the other thing about her. She didn't, I mean, she held herself in appropriate good regard, but not above anyone else. But I've always felt that Harriet was that on earth, and I don't know who has replaced her. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting anybody else who I think maybe is that, but she was that for me.
Thank you, Susan. I'm David Prager. I'm here with my partner, Sarah. We drove up in our Mustang. I've known Ken and Harriet, I guess now for 25 years, and I consider them among my closest friends. I have a poem I'd like to read, but I think I'm going to save it for a little later. But in the meanwhile, I just want to mention that Harriet at West End Synagogue inaugurated a practice that many of us still call Bograding. And that was walking up to whoever was new and introducing yourself and making friends with them. An extraordinary practice that takes a little gumption and a little verve and a whole lot of caring. And that was who Harriet was.
Hi, I'm Barbara, and my husband is home with a case of bronchitis. And Harriet, I'm a member of West End Synagogue, and that's how I know Harriet. And for a short period, I did work with her at Kulano. She gave me an assignment, and it was fun working with her and getting her to help me with it and guide me and be so nurturing, even when I maybe messed up a little bit here and there. She was very forgiving and helpful. But most of all, what I remember are my phone calls to Harriet. There were many phone calls, and they pretty much went the same way. Hello, Harriet? Oh, please help me. And she did. And she always did. And even knowing how busy she was never, ever too busy to help me. So in my mind, she has the image of a rescuer, which is a kind of way of thinking of someone, which is the most loving and best way I can describe someone is as a rescuer, with all the love and care that goes behind being that kind of person. And that's how she was.
The word in Hebrew is matzliach, right?
Yes. So I'm Rich Robbins. Harriet is my mom's younger sister. And I'll pick up on the theme of just being helpful throughout school. And I remember with college essays and throughout life, she was just always there to help basically everyone she encountered, and really appreciate that.
Oops. I pressed a button.
No, you're just blocking it with your hand.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Hi, Mackie.
And this is
Hi,
also
How
going
are
to
ya?
YouTube if anyone watches.
Yeah.
You want to
Get rid of my finger. Okay. All right. Other than Naomi and Maxine, is on the phone, I've probably knew Harriet longer than anybody here. Because we met when, we were kids.
She was
Um,
about 12, I guess.
yeah, she was probably 12. Yeah. And one woman mentioned that she was a rescuer, and she really rescued me. I'm Irma Ball. I used to be Irma Yucht. I was married to Harriet's first cousin, Sam, and we became divorced. And to show you what kind of person Harriet was, she came to my house because I was in pretty bad straits. She came to my house. This is her cousin. We were divorcing. And what can she do to help? And I said, so she said, well, there's got to be a women's support group around here somewhere. And I said, well, I don't know where to go. She says, wait a minute, I'll find it. I was living in Teaneck, New Jersey. She was in Manhattan. So I don't know if she came out specifically or she was in the area, and she looks up in the phone book and finds this Women's Information Center and hooks me up with a support group that I went to for about 6 months. And I mean, that was her. She really did rescue me. And the timing was fabulous. Bye, Mac.
I did.
My name is Kaya Weinstein. I knew Harriet since about 2003, maybe 2002 and a half. And I met her because I was in Uganda volunteering with the Abiyudaya, and I kept sending emails on behalf of the headmaster of the primary school, Hadassah School. And she finally said, well, who's behind writing all of these? Because somehow I guess I got mentioned. And then when I got back, and then she started corresponding with me about the best way to handle certain issues. So already being an advisor. And she's really a mentor. And I guess I think of her as a lifeguard, which involves rescuing, but actually I think she saved a lot of lives and we just don't know that. But I think with all the programs between the clean water and the healthcare, the education, I really believe that. As personally, there were so many bright spots, calling her up with all kinds of technical issues that I really was looking for emotional support. So it sort of morphed into that. And she introduced me to the home exchange, where you swap houses when you travel. And, you know, she basically had these great ideas and she'd be so enthusiastic that I just want to do them. And at one point also, it's very interesting, and I'm not sure how this developed, but she seemed very open to making positive changes in her life as well as for others. And there was a period where I was talking about something and she said, I'm really working on listening and being empathetic, and I'm using more empathetic phrases. And it's like, this is Harriet, you know? Like, not that she wasn't, but she would sort of jump to problem solving. But then she would show a lot of compassion as she did. Clearly, she cared. And even when she gave me answers, I talked to her maybe a day or two later. Oh, I just thought of something else. So clearly, she kept us in her minds and hearts, and I will sorely miss her.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sarah Wright. I'm David Prager's partner, and I'm privileged to have Ken and Harriet as friends of mine. Really, really feel privileged. Harriet was a great force, great personality, and David and I go to a lot of theater, as some of you know, probably. And Harriet said, "Okay, Ken and I want to start going to the theater with you all." And so we listed out all the different Manhattan theater programs that we subscribe to, and Harriet researched them, which one is the best suited for them. And so for quite a few years, the four of us went to Manhattan Theater Club, all the productions together, and we'd go out afterwards and talk about the shows, and it was so much fun. And Ken still goes with us. So I'll pass along to Maris. Thank you.
I'm Maris Weber, and I also know Harriet through West End Synagogue, but I can ditto a lot of the statements that have been made about how forceful and smart, wise, creative she was in helping you problem solve. But we also had overlapping Bergen County as a background because I grew up in Teaneck. And when I met her for the first time and I said, Bograds, I know Bograds. My parents furnished their house with Bograds. And then she told me about her background. And in fact, it was one and the same Bograd. So I felt lucky that I had two connections to Harriet, who was everything everyone has said, being a force for good in this world.
I'm Alan Gotthelf. I'm Ken Klein's designated driver.
Very valuable person.
I'm Jeremy Klein Ronkin. I am Margie's husband, and I have so many things, so many wonderful memories of Harriet. I didn't even really know her that long, probably 10 years. And she's just an amazing person. And I just have so many things I could say. I should pick one. She loved to do research on, she loved to do research. So if we needed a new microwave oven or a new computer, she was all about that. And she would, would say, we're looking at microwaves. And she would say, hold on. And then like an hour later, she would send us all these things. This one was this one was ranked second highest in wire cutter. And this one was Consumer Reports, blah, blah, blah. So she was very good at that. And she was extremely loving and accepting of me. And she really made me feel like just such an amazing part, so included in the family. And
Razzie, do you want to say anything about grandma or about the grandma tree, maybe?
My grandma, well, she's been an amazing person.
She's an amazing person.
She's always inspired me and helped me with a lot of things.
She always inspired you and helped you? Oh, wow. And what's something that you remember about her that you miss?
She's been extremely nice to me.
Yeah, she was. And when you were sad, did she give you a hug?
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you want to tell about the grandma tree?
My grandma tree? Yeah, my grandma.
Okay, well, I'll explain it a little more and then you can. So I told, okay, yes, Oriel can help explain it. Well, I'll just say I told Raziel that even though grandma is not around anymore, that her body is becoming part of the flowers and the trees, and her soul might be looking down on us. And so then this is what happened at the tree across the street.
And so Raziel calls the tree across the street from our house the grandma tree, and says that grandma is now and says that my grandma is basically part of that tree.
Yes, and whenever we pass the tree, Raziel hugs grandma by hugging the tree. And recently we had another friend who lost his grandma, and Raziel made a demonstration about how you can hug the grandma tree, and that's how you can feel close to your grandma. Right, Razzie?
If they passed away.
Yeah, if they passed away. Just so nice of you. Okay. I have something, but do you want to share anything, a story about or something you love about grandma? What's your name?
I'm Oriel, and one of my best memories that it's like my main memory with her, cooking with her and making cookies, and yeah.
And how did she feel whenever you did a new thing?
Happy.
She was extremely enthusiastic.
Say proud.
Oh yes, she was very proud.
And I really miss her now, and I really hope to see her
one day.
One day.
Yeah. So I feel like there's lots of stories that have been
There's a whole bunch of people back there.
I know I was just gonna go. Oh, okay, sorry.
And Evelyn and.
Okay, fine. Oh, sorry. Okay, no, sorry. So you can keep going and then I'll.
Okay, sure.
I just have a lot.
Naomi?
I'm Naomi, and clearly I know Harriet longer than anybody else here. I remember when she was born on a snowy day in April and was there until the end. those of you who know me know that I'm unlike Harriet in many ways. She was very neat, and if she bought something new, she'd throw out something old. I have never thrown a thing out in my life. And as a result, our small house was getting to be more and more cluttered. Anytime I've had Hanukkah parties since Ed and I were married. And when more and more people lived in New York and my house was less and less suitable for entertaining, Harriet always opened up her house to us. And I have entertained in her house more times than I could possibly tell you. So it is our great pleasure today to be entertaining for Harriet. It's the other way around. We bought this house the week before Harriet passed away. Those of you who were here for Shiva remember that there was no furniture here yet. We couldn't move because we knew she was sick and we couldn't hire a mover. And most Shiva was at Ken's apartment in New York, but one night we had it in Jersey. And I remember saying, since Harriet was such a feminist, we have a balcony. The women can all stay downstairs and the men can look at us from the balcony.
Yeah, it's video.
Eddie, John speak. Oh, John speak.
That's still on. Okay.
Ed Robbins, Harriet's brother-in-law, and it's comforting to know that Naomi does not throw out anything old. So here I am. And did anyone mention that Harriet was a very good dancer? She could do ballroom and modern dancing. We saw her dancing in the evening one time in a park near her house, and was sort of like dancing in the dark, but it was very beautiful. Next.
Hi, I'm Nathan Crewman from TNEC. And I first want to express my gratitude to Harriet's extended family for having us here and how wonderful it is to open their home, and for Ken and everyone as well. My grandmother and Ken's father were siblings. So I've known Ken and Jerry and Peggy for many years since, as I told Jerry, they visited in Pittsburgh years ago and brought me a Louisville Slugger when I was just a little kid. When Harriet entered the family, it was very special for all of us. And I had the pleasure of actually living the floor below them when I moved to New York in 1990, and having another family here and being able to connect with Margie and Sarah and Harriet and Ken. And it was a home away from home, and our relationship developed more and more. What struck me about Harriet was not a rescuer, so to speak, so much as just a very practical, real person who would ask me a question. Like, if you can't complain to Harriet, because what would end up happening is say, well, what do you want to do about it? Or what's the action? She would get to the heart of thing, kind of beyond all the nonsense, and ask really what's going on, and help me process things and help everybody do that. And it could be something as simple as, like, you're going to buy a computer. This just.
They either think somebody would join their left.
Okay, maybe somebody, forgive me.
Mackey's still there. Oh, we have someone else. Susan Scherzer.
Okay. Okay, welcome, Susan, also. I was just saying how Harriet would be able to focus in on an issue. Instead of like buying a computer, she would retrieve parts and she would build a computer. And it never ceased to amaze me what she could do with this. Years later, when I got married, I had to bring this. Many are probably familiar with this, but this was a gift that I received from Ken and Harriet many, many years ago, which graces our Shabbos table. And that's the thing about a gift. Harriet was filled with gift for everybody around her. And this is a gift that keeps on giving to our family, to our guests. And I'm just grateful, because what Ken said at the end today is really what says it all. And Kulanu is it's us, it's plural. It was always about us, about being together, and not about a single individual person, but about a kind of a unity among Jews, among people, non-Jews, everybody. And what Ken said was that, if I get it right, if I get it wrong, forgive me, but we're all here because we love Harriet, and Harriet loved all of us, and there were no exclusions. And that love is really supreme. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ken's sister. And short and sweet. Ken was kind of in a dark place when he met Harriet. And as the saying goes, there's a cover for every pot. And if this was a shirt for a cover for every pot, Ken, you got it.
I am Harriet's brother's grandson, Evan. And one of my favorite stories about Harriet that Jeremy aptly pointed out is that she is excellent at research and incredibly welcoming. So I had been dating my girlfriend for probably about a month or two, and we were invited to break the fast at their home. And so she asked me my girlfriend's name, and I said, we would love to attend. And we showed up, and the first thing Harriet said to my girlfriend was, "I've seen you perform." And my girlfriend was very confused, but she's an actor and she had been performing since she was in high school. So I had told Harriet her name, and she had already, just with her first name, been able to find her performances through high school and had seen her perform even before I had. So I thought that was a very amazing bit of research that she did. And it was so sweet that she opened her home to us to welcome us to break the fast with them.
Hi, Mackie. So I'm Mark Bograd. I'm Harriet's nephew. And I guess I'd kind of trail on to what Evan talked about. And others have alluded to Harriet's enthusiasm for really anything that anyone was doing, that if no matter what stage of life you were in, she always was actively interested in what was going on. And it was a great comfort to know that someone had that much care, whether the details were significant or mundane, for that matter. But she was always ever fascinated and ever interested.
Hello, I'm Joyce Robbins. I'm Harriet's niece and daughter of Naomi and Ed. I'll share some very early memories. And Harriet was involved in, I think, a teacher's center in New Haven, Connecticut, and she would take us there and we would play around with all the different types of tools and games and things that they had. And we shared an interest in art and arts and crafts, and she taught me how to paint and do macrame and rubber stamping, all different kinds of arts and crafts projects. She invited my brother and me to come to New Haven, and she was very interested in what we thought of Uncle Ken. And she said that we were the judges and she needed our approval. Because she wanted to make sure that the person she was dating was, kid approved. So, so untrue. So I will share, lest you think that she was interested in everything, I have one area that she was absolutely not interested in. She came every year to our Super Bowl gathering and promptly fell asleep on the sofa within 5 minutes of kickoff and had to be awakened at the end of the game. So that's all.
I've already had a chance to speak, but I was reminded my actual first encounter with Harriet when she became a member of West End, and I was already volunteering in the office, a lot of things around the accounting system. For years, I did the bookkeeping, and we got a new computer and printer and a few things, and it was very much like color coded and plug and play, but Harriet came and played with me in the office getting the computer set up, and I was very comfortable asking her. She really, usually you try to find an 11-year-old to do that, but she really, she was fearless and would, like an 11-year-old. I mean, the reason that they're good at that is they're not afraid to push a button and see what happens, whereas most adults are afraid they've got an expensive piece of something and they're going to screw it up. So, Harriet was fun to play with like that. We shared that in common.
It's interesting that that Susan mentioned the word fearless, because I was going to mention that. Harriet was competent in so many ways, and she was fearless in certain ways. I remember her telling me that she invited Sarah Moulton, the television cook, to her house for dinner. How many of us would ask, someone like Julia Child to their houses for dinner? And she said that Sarah Moulton said this was wonderful, that nobody invites her and just has ordinary food for her. So
I know I introduced myself, but I have so many unbelievable memories of Harriet, and everything everybody said here is true. She really was open to learn new behaviors and new things in an unusual way, because most people fall into their patterns. And I could cry about this because it's true. I also want to say she changed my life in major league ways. She took me under her arms. I mean, the way I found out about Kulanu altogether, I was teaching at a small rabbinical school and they had a retreat, and Aaron Kintu Moses from Uganda was there. And I was working in HIV services and always wanted to do AIDS in Africa. And then I heard there was Jewish in Africa. And that absolutely superseded anything I was interested in. And I asked Aaron to give me the contact because I want to volunteer. And on a napkin, he wrote Harriet's name and her phone number. And that's how it all began. And for years and years and years, we worked together, we planned together, we made Kulanu grow. And she should know that now we're in 33 countries. And a lot of it has to do because Harriet made that foundation. Harriet kept those books. Harriet made those manuals. Harriet did everything to make it a not-for-profit that's functional and beautiful and has a future and has changed many lives around the world. And it's not for no reason that she's known as Ima Harriet, and they still refer to her as Ima Harriet. And lots of people around Africa and elsewhere love Harriet.
Are we doing another round or?
Well, there's a bunch of people that wrote in things. That
Okay.
I want to honor. Maybe I'll let. And David has a thing to read.
Oh my God, I'm flipping it.
Maris has something.
Hi there.
Ready? All right, tell me when.
So, a few words. I'm David Prager. First of all, I just want to thank the owners of this magnificent house. What a beautiful home with the balustrade at the top and the high windows looking out onto the sky, and the beautiful food. So thank you so much for having us. Harriet was a person who had a profound impact on so many people in the world. And that's really a rare thing. And I was moved by that impact when I heard many of the people speak at her funeral. And I wrote a poem afterwards. And so I was going to ask if you would be so kind as to hold that.
Yes,
so,
of course.
so I can focus on it and read it. So this is called Wildflowers for Mama Harriet. May we cast our hopes like wild seedlings, even in the brittle fields of winter, patient and sure that they might someday burst to flower as the dawn of our own potential. Formidable though any obstacle may be, may it never overshadow the fire glow of our will to surmount it. And then, Even darkness can become the place where we learn to see with our hearts and grasp that last spark of light of a long extinguished star still shining in a vast night sky. And may we hold fast, all of us, together as an ever-enduring family, embracing our differences as we would shelter chicks beneath feathered wings. And may we dance with arms aloft and fingers outstretched, dancing as one across seas and mountains and even greater human divides. May we dance and dance like wildflowers in the wind. Thank you.
Did anyone talk about her dance? Because she invited me and she was doing this free dance.
I did. I talked about the dance. Yeah.
Yeah, so she invited me and it was just wild. It was wonderful. Yeah.
So I know Mackie and Susan are on. I don't know if you want to say anything, but
I'll be glad to, Richie. I don't know if people can hear me.
Yeah. Yep.
Can people hear me?
yes.
Yes.
Okay. A few things. First of all, when I lived in Manhattan, when I was first married, we lived at 96th Street on West End Avenue, and Harriet was at 98th and West End Avenue. So we continued that tradition of living like a block away from each other, which we had all our lives. But I mention it because we went to New Dance Group Studio on 47th Street together. And we were just normal people. A lot of people there were in the soaps, trying to get in shape and whatever. And Harriet once said she felt something peculiar about dancing because it wasn't so good or whatever. And then she said, and she saw there was somebody who was in our class who had no toes and was trying and dancing anyway. And that inspired her to get with it and do as best as she could. So that was early on in her dancing career. And the other thing, it just so happened that in our synagogue, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, Marietta actually. This month's synagogue bulletin had an article from the rabbi. And in the article, he said what we spent money on from the tzedakah that they collected at the Minions in the morning. And one of the things was they sent $2,000 to the Abu Dabaya community to rebuild their synagogue. And it just, so talk about far-reaching influence. You know, Harriet has impacted synagogues all over the country to help the African Jews. So I just, just the timing of it, the fact that it was this week when her unveiling was coming got to me. So those are two main things, but I want to show you. I don't know if you can see, this is pickup sticks, but Harriet and I would play endlessly on the floor, playing pickup sticks and jacks and getting, I guess, our dexterity going. And when I visited her in New York, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I brought them with me and we played on the table and we just had so much fun reenacting our childhood. So anyway, she was a big part of my life.
It's going to be on YouTube, so it'll be okay.
They're called pickup.
Oh, yeah, hold them up. There you go. Hold that. Thanks.
And Susan, I see you're on. Do you want to say anything?
I apologize. I was not able to join to hear everybody, so I don't know what's already been said. So there is so much that, you know, and everybody knows how much Harriet accomplished and what an amazing person she was. I really love that Margie chose the Marge Piercy poem to be of use about people who jump in head first, because I was a founding member of West End, and we were used to seeing new members come and begin to know people and begin to maybe think about, and we would sort of get behind them to try and encourage them to get involved in one way or another. And none of that was necessary with Harriet and Ken. I mean, Harriet arrived and jumped in, and I think within a minute was chair of the membership committee, and then was involved with 12 other things. And you always knew where Ken was because he was sitting somewhere playing with whatever was the smallest, most, the child who most needed attention. Ken could be relied on to take care of. I found a line in the Talmud this week when I was researching something else, and it talked about, what David said about the windows reminded me that Rabbi Chia Bar Abba said that you should always pray in a room with windows. And I don't know what he meant by that, but what I understand it to mean is that your prayer should never be just about, being there in that moment and then you walk away and you don't think about it, but that you should pray in a way where you're always open to the rest of the world and the people around you and everything that is going on, whether you see it or whether you have to go searching for it. And that was Harriet, is that she always prayed. She always lived her life filled with windows and doors and ways for other people to reach her and for her to reach other people. And she was wonderful.
I have an anecdote. Thank you, Richie. Hi, this is Ken's brother, Jerry, again. And I had a situation that Harriet was involved in. This had to be 25 years ago. Our daughter was in an a cappella group at Brown, and we went to Carnegie Hall to hear her. Her group is very good. We went to Carnegie Hall. Harriet was there, Kenny was there, members of our family were there, other members of the family. And I went to get the tickets. We had bought the tickets, but I had to pick them up. And the seats were not next to each other. We had like 8 tickets. They were not next to each other. And I said, well, that's life. We'll get together again after the performance. And so Harry says, what's going on? And I said, well, we're not going to be sitting together, but that's okay. And she said, no, that will not stand. And she said, oh, Harry, you don't really have to do this. She says, oh, yes, we have to sit together. She goes back to the box office, wound up coming back 10 minutes later with 8 seats next to each other. And she said, it was an adventure. And that was the Harriet that I remember. She saw a challenge, she grabbed it. And it's a good memory. That's my memory.
One of the things that is always in my head about Harriet is that she was such an individualist. She felt, or it didn't appear that she ever felt any pressure to follow the group and to do what, prevailing trends dictated. If you said to her, Harriet, I like your skirt, she said, oh, I bought it from the guy on the corner of West End and whatever. Or she'd show us an accessory in your apartment, and somebody in our group might have said, doesn't really match the rest of the apartment. And Harriet's response was, I like color, and this is very colorful, and this is the way it is. Yeah. That applied to her cooking. She had what my girls would call concoctions that we all enjoyed, but whoever thought of mixing rice with chopped liver? But everybody in our family loved it, and she made it year after year after year. I don't know where it came from, but we loved it, and never occurred to her that it was odd. So that was something that I thought was very admirable, to never be swayed by what other people might think, just to follow your own path comfortably. So.
Because I have like multiple things. So I'll just say a thing for myself that I was thinking about how people keep saying how my mom was fearless and how, she's this community builder and could do anything. But something that I think about is I met Jeremy when I was 32. We got married when I was 34, which is pretty normal for my generation. But for my mom, meeting my dad when she was 32, like she was she said, I was an old maid, like she had really passed the point that everybody expected her to get married. The Jewish community was set up for people with young families, and she was just outside of that. And so she spent like, 7 years, let's say, in a space where like she did not fit in, and she was so much before her time. Like she said what she thought. She wasn't prim and proper. She asked questions. She got things done. She went to law school, when that wasn't a thing that many women did. And none of that was really, I think, an easy way to be at that time. And I think about that, and I'm proud of her that she did that. But I also think about how hard I think it was to feel on the outside. And I feel like something that's true about my mom is that she spent the rest of her life working to make sure nobody else had to feel the way she felt. Like she felt for years like this place is not for me. Like I grew up, and then there's no place for me anymore for me to be myself. And I think she felt that as a single woman. I think she felt that also as someone that was really committed to civil rights activism, and as she tells it, the conservative movement and her synagogue, they preached that the civil rights movement was bad for the Jews because it would potentially be bad for Jewish continuity to not be excluded anymore. And they wanted people to, stay excluded so that Jews wouldn't intermarry. And so she left. She no longer felt comfortable in her synagogue, and she apparently went to the rabbi and said, I don't agree with, what you said, which is also, not appropriate or whatever. But then, I think a lot of people would be like, damaged, traumatized forever by that, or leave the community. But what she did is, when she found love and built family, she was like, I'm gonna create a new school that's going to be this kind of Judaism that I've built for myself on the outskirts, on the margins. And I'm going to be every synagogue that I'm in. I'm going to make sure that everyone feels welcome, no matter who they are. And not just that, but all the Jews in the world that, maybe don't feel welcome in the mainstream Jewish community. I'm going to find a way to bring them in. And not just the Jews across oceans, but, there's a lot of Black Jews in New York City that are outside of the mainstream Jewish community. And she went and she got to know all of these people that other people like don't accept or questioning their credentials. And she was just like, that's not what's important. Like what's important is like what's important, I think, to her about being a person and about being a Jewish person was to say, like, this is your home and we want you here. And or this is our dance party and we want you to dance with us. And I feel really blessed. So much of who I am is really credit to her. And some people have said to me, like, how did you become who you are? And I say that, like, when I was little, we had this 1-bedroom apartment on Broadway that some of you got to come to, and my bed was just behind the couch in the living room. And so I would just there would just be meetings in our house all the time, like scheming about like starting a new school, or like health centers in the South Bronx, or like anti-poverty stuff, or just all different kind, or starting a yoga class like 20 years before I think most people did yoga. And I would just go to sleep to the sound of people planning for the world that they were going to create. And so I really feel like it was so easy for me to be a person that felt like, oh, I want to do something. I want to start something. And I could do that because that's what I saw my whole life, was just my mom feeling like I paved a different path for myself, and it was okay. And now I'm doing that for all these other people. And that's something that all of us can do. And I feel like for so many people, she not only said welcome, but she said, like, you can be your weird self, like whatever that is, and that is really welcome. And I also just want to appreciate that in addition to all of the sort of productive things that she did, one memory comes to mind that there was a time when I was being kind of bullied in school around 4th or 5th grade, where I had said something mean to another kid, basically because I had been bullied too. And I felt Like I am the worst person. I felt so horrible. I think that's like the worst I've ever felt, knowing that I did something wrong. And I was so ashamed to come tell my mom because I knew that she's such a kind person and, it wasn't someone to be bullied. And I came and I just cried and I told her, and she just like welcomed me into her arms and was just like, there's nothing you could ever do that would make me not love you and not be proud of you. And like the fact that you feel so bad, like that's the beginning of you being able to make a right choice. And that kind of love and that's a kind of love that's like a forgiveness. I was explaining to the kids about my baby brother that didn't survive and how his name was Rachamim, and that Racha means womb and Rachamim means mercy. And I was trying to explain to them, they don't know what mercy means either. So I said, it's the kind of love that you have for your kid where like, no matter what they do, you're going to forgive them because like, their humanity and their lovability so deeply. And I feel like that kind of Rachamim, that kind of mother love, like I so received. And now I am doing my best to pass it on to my kids, not just because it's kind, but because it feels like what a beautiful invitation to tshuva, to transformation, to be like, I know that you're good. And I know that if you feel like you could be better, like that's the beginning of your being able to. And then a last thing I'll say that's sort of just in the dancing piece is that I love to dance from a very young age when I was a baby. And even like when I was a little kid, and there used to be street musicians in New York City on every corner. And my mom made sure that at every single street musician, like whatever was happening, we would stop and I would just do a show. And like whoever was at our house for whatever meeting, there would be a show. And then she started, when I got really into tap dancing, was part of a form of tap dancing that was really like a Black, like African American form of, rhythm tap was African American form of tap. And I was taught by Chaz Young, who is the son of the creator of the Lindy. She would take me to all of these tap shows in Harlem, and they would say, okay, well, all of the tap dancers come up. And it was all these like tap legends, like professional tap dancers that toured the world. And she would be like, Margie, go up. And so I would just stand there like when I was 7 or something. And I'm sure I was like 5,000 times worse than these other people. But she was just like, you belong here. Like this can be your space too. And so she just sent me up to dance with these people, and they were incredibly kind to me. And I just feel so grateful that she had that kind of sense that like we can be where we want. And on the other side, when she was running this organization, that's a bunch of upper middle class white Jewish people helping primarily Jews of color in Africa, that she was also really open to my thinking about racial justice and the ways that that could be perceived as white saviorism and like what kind of internal work she would have to do. So she both felt like I'm going to show up and I'm going to be part of this, and also like I'm going to learn and be really sensitive. So those are some things I feel grateful for.
I was going to tell a quick story about Margie's tap dancing, which is one time we went away to some hotel for kids, and they had what we used to do on street corners is I would sing the Sunny Side of the Street, and Margie would tap dance to it. And we went to this hotel for that specialized in family things, and they had a talent contest. And so I sang the Sunny Side of the Street, and Margie tap danced, and it went fine. But I remember afterwards we were walking with someone who's talking to Margie, said, I don't know, kid, if you want to get somewhere in show business, you're going to have to break up the act.
I always remembered your tap dancing, Ken.
So what's cooking here?
Very good. Yeah, we're good.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I'm reading a tribute that was written by Julie Sandler Friedman, who was unable to make today's unveiling, but very much wanted me to read her words. Suddenly, At various times, I see Harriet. I see her walking in the door to the synagogue. I see a new face in the congregation and think what Harriet would do to welcome them. Watching someone dancing in the park or in the street or doing the hora at a wedding and giving herself to the music seamlessly with no self-consciousness, I think of Harriet. It was my great privilege to deliver one of many eulogies at Harriet's funeral. Permeating all those eulogies was the theme of Harriet's transmission of what she understood and cared about in things small and large. Jewish learning or computer technical skills, beautiful musical pieces or fundraising possibilities, political action information or travel advice, the small and the large. Writing my contribution to those eulogies, I tried to stay in the time constraint of 5 minutes and to keep the focus fully on Harriet. However, I was left with some stories of Harriet and me that I had not been able to convey. I meant to write them up and send them to Ken, Margie, and Sarah. This occasion, the unveiling of Harriet's stone, gave me the impetus to form those vague impressions of Harriet left unsaid into something solid. In my eulogy, I told the story of Harriet and the lemon squeezer. One night we went out to dinner with Harriet and Ken, and I had mentioned that I did not cook a certain dish often because you have to squeeze so many lemons. Harriet said, use a lemon squeezer, an instrument I did not have. This practicality had not occurred to me. In very short order, a lemon squeezer arrived in the mail. Well, what I did not add was this. On the night of that dinner, I had very recently completed my doctorate in physical therapy. It had not been an easy period working and getting my doctorate, and Harriet and Ken were warm in this celebration of this milestone. When I got the lemon squeezer in the mail, an amazingly short time later, the package was addressed to Dr. Julie Sandler Friedman. Immediately, I wrote to Harriet, and I still have those emails. Was it you, Harriet? I asked, adding, whether or not it was, that was a good dinner night. Harriet replied, yes, it was Ken and me. I tried to instruct them to include a note congratulating you on your graduation and thanking you for your fabulous dinner. Love, Harriet. That was Harriet, continually doing 1,000 small actions that meant so much to the people involved and that might never occur to most of us. Years later, during the period when Harriet's final illness was already keeping her at home, and shortly after the day we went over to spend Harriet and Ken's anniversary with them, Ken called to deliver Harriet's request that my husband, composer David Friedman, play some of his music over the phone. David, very glad to have a specific way to be of service to Harriet, said yes. We called on speakerphone, and David sent his caring with intention through the keys of the piano. He played either Achat Sha'alti or Elohai Neshama, and the two of us sang. Then we all four sat silently. At some point during this call, Harriet the dancer, confined to her chair, said to me spontaneously, how do I dance now? I answered with no sentimentality, Harriet, you can always dance. You can, for example, dance with your fingers, feeling them move to the music. There was a pause as Harriet took this in and went on to other subjects. At Harriet's funeral, she was eulogized by Bonita Nathan Sussman, who said, Rabbi Heschel taught There are three ways to mourn. The first is to cry. The second is to grow silent. The third is to transform sorrow into song. Harriet taught me how to dance with my fingers. Even in my wheelchair, she is dancing with the angels. My eyes filled with tears at this. Now, for all I know, Harriet had told Benita that dancing with fingers long before I said anything about it, and was just too polite to say to me that day on the phone, "Oh, yes, I know that already." Either way, the point is the same. What was so clear yet again in Benita Sussman's words was that when Harriet Bograd learned something new, anything useful, anything helpful, anything colorful, she passed it along. What was clear to her is that in order to learn in order to share. When Harriet received or learned something new, she took it in, metabolized it, transformed it, and passed it on. Wove a tapestry with it, gave it wings. Harriet was about transmission, a teacher in the truest sense of the word. As such, she is still here very much with us.
I have a thing that's like several paragraphs. I'm thinking maybe we must pass it around.
Let me give that to you.
Thank you. And people can read. And the people that are still here, if you want to like come closer, you should feel welcome to. Okay. So this is from Roberta and Enid, who are two of the four best friends at Bryn Mawr. Okay. And I'm just going to pass this around to keep reading. Okay. We, Roberta and Enid, met Harriet soon after the three of us had arrived at Bryn Mawr College in the first days of our freshman year. Harriet at that time was 16 years old, a bubbly and enthusiastic young woman, just as ready for college as we were, two 18-year-olds. Many years have passed since then. Two of us are now in our 80s, and as we reflect back on our time with Harriet, we initially remember much about the years the three of us shared at Bryn Mawr from 1959 to 1963.
It did not take long after we arrived at Bryn Mawr for us to recognize that Harriet was a deeply principled person concerned with human rights, moral character, and authenticity. Perhaps because the two of us shared many of Harriet's qualities, we bonded quickly with her, and the three of us went on to learn much from each other. Indeed, during our years at Bryn Mawr College, we taught each other many things, not only by sitting down every evening and talking about our personal experiences, but by spreading to one another day after day all the intriguing ideas our professors were presenting to us in the courses we were taking. And I'm going to pass this. Bonnie, do you have time to read a paragraph?
Okay, I can read it.
Okay, Jean? Okay.
Can you pass this on?
Oops, what happened?
It's number 3. Just turn sideways.
Sideways? There we are. Paragraph 3.
All right.
One of the qualities of Harriet that we most admired during our college years was how open and receptive she was toward people of diverse backgrounds. When Wamere, Wangi, a student from Kenya, joined our Bryn Mawr class during our sophomore year, Harriet not only welcomed him warmly, she invited Wamere to spend many holidays when Bryn Mawr's buildings were closed at home with Harriet's family. Such openness and generosity impressed the two of us because we ourselves had been raised in families that were less accepting of Black people. Nevertheless, all of us loved every minute Wamere spent with us at Bryn Mawr. Indeed, Wamere made our threesome into a foursome, a beautiful friendship that would last throughout the remainder of our lives.
When we now think about Harriet's life after college, we realized how much stayed the same
and much changed. The lifelong continuities that stem from Harriet's college years were followed by a wonderful flowering of qualities she developed later in life. In fact, we remain astonished to this day by the turns Harriet's life ultimately took as she traveled along routes that neither she nor we had ever imagined possible. The way Harriet's life ultimately emerged had not been predictable when we first met her. We still retain many memories of all that Wameri taught us about Kenya, her home country in East Africa. It was during our college years that Kenya prepared to gain independence from Britain, and Wameri proudly participated in that national development. On the floor of Harriet's dormitory room at Bryn Mawr, Wameri cut out cloth and sewed together the design of an official dress for Kenyan women to wear in celebration of their country's freedom from colonial rule. As the three of us listened to Wameri's stories, she taught us words in Swahili and even ways to tell a few jokes. Such contact with Wameri led Harriet to deep interest in African societies. Years later, she would feel inspired through the organization Kulanu to embrace African tribes who were convinced their ancestry was Jewish and who wished to reclaim their Jewish heritage. Annie, do you want to read? Number 6. Can you read?
I actually need glasses.
Okay.
Harriet's own dedication to Judaism existed throughout her life. When she reached Bryn Mawr, she also took courses at Gratz College of Jewish Studies in Philadelphia. Harriet not only continued learning, she made it possible for many others also to learn, like all the children who have been educated at the Abraham Joshua Heschel School in New York City. Harriet did much to help establish and support this exceptional Jewish day school. It was founded in 1983.
Thank you. Okay, okay, this is very long. Okay, I think that if anyone wants to read this more, they can. Because I think people are getting ready to go, but thank you so much for participating, and I can share that. Does people agree I should stop reading this thing? So I think people feel done. Okay, thank you so much for being part of this. I don't know who's still on, if it's Susan and Aunt Mackie, but thank you for joining. And this concludes our Zoom.
All right, bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
I just want to say thank you so much, Richie, for allowing us to share this with you.
Yes, thank you, Richie.
By doing
Of course.
this. Thank you so much.
Great seeing you, Mackie.
Okay, you too.
Hopefully we'll see you in New York at some point soon.
Hopefully.